Very much, Cahir, look, and can I first of all just welcome the opportunity to say to make a contribution on the bill, and in doing so I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Minister for Education from my own county and the previous speaker, and Deputy Moynihan alluded to the fact that I think it's universally accepted that Minister O'Sullivan is doing a very good job in the Department of Education. I wish her well in that role. The bill, as is laid out, it speaks about the internationalisation of education, and it focuses primarily, really solely on third-level internationalisation. But as the Minister will know, and I had some discussion with her predecessor in relation to this as well, I think from a government point of view that we should be looking at internationalisation at a much earlier stage, particularly given the very high level of interest that's been shown in Ireland, or shown to Ireland by parents of young second-level students in particular, and the opportunity to spend time in Irish second-level schools. And apart from the cultural impact and the impact that it has on the school community as a whole at the moment, there's also a very obvious benefit to the economic situation in relation to students coming in from outside of the European Union or within the European Union that are attending our second-level schools for short, fixed periods of time, give a major economic benefit to families right across the country. And I suppose I would use the analogy of when I started in college after doing my Leaving Cert, we stayed in digs, and obviously that was a major benefit economically to the families that we stayed with. And through I suppose it wasn't any intentional thing, it was particularly a major advantage to women. All of the houses that I stayed in, it was the woman of the house that looked after me, and they did so very well, and they had a difficulty in doing that. And I turned out all right, Cahir, look, you'll admit. But I think that there's an opportunity in terms of second-level students to look at that concept at second level, and I see huge benefits in it. There's a benefit to the second level student that's coming in. Obviously they're being exposed to English, and they're being immersed in our culture. There's a benefit to the wider school community that they're being integrated with people from different culture, different background, different religion, and we know in the recent past all too well that I think the more that we expose our younger people to different cultural diversity, the better off we all are for it, and it avoids difficulties into the future. And then you have the economic benefit as well. So I would hope that the Department of Education would look at this around the development of a strategy with your colleagues in the Departments of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Department of Justice, because there are visa issues in relation to students coming in from outside of the European Union and in countries especially where we don't have visa arrangements. But I think there's a massive opportunity. We speak English. We're an inoffensive country. We haven't colonised anybody. We haven't tramped across the world and caused problems. So we are liked, and I think we should use that. And I know that in the briefing document that was circulated from the Department of Education, that Enterprise Ireland is very much a cornerstone part of what the Minister is trying to achieve. And I think that's important, because this is not only about the educational benefit, but there's an obvious economic benefit to this aspect of the bill, but to the wider use of education as something that can be exported. Because every child or student coming into Ireland is essentially an export, and it needs to be regarded as that. And I think that Enterprise Ireland, in their promoting us in emerging economies, and I know that reference has been made to the BRIC countries, but I would also see potential, for instance, in the likes of Hong Kong, in the emerging middle classes in India, in some of the African continent as well, where they're trying to build capacity with, building a generation of people who will be able to lead those countries into the future. And that's why I think the Department of Foreign Affairs have a role in this, because Irish Aid have established over many years a capacity building expertise within the future governments of countries that, we're trying to assist. And I think there may be possibilities there that Irish Aid could assist, in bringing students from project countries to Irish universities and Irish colleges and upskilling them here in Ireland and exposing them to what we have that works. Obviously, it's important to expose them to things that don't work as well from a governance point of view and from a government point of view. And in that context, Minister, I know that the HEA, or the Higher Education Authority, are the primary funder of the colleges that are being referred to in the bill. And they were before the Public Accounts Committee recently, and I have to say it was absolutely absolutely gobsmacking that there was one particular college that was before the Public Accounts Committee, namely the National College of Art and Design. And for 5 years, they were not capable of producing a set of accounts. And the Higher Education Authority continued to pump money into it, while whether they knew or they didn't know that accounts hadn't been signed off on, I believed was not the relevant thing. The relevant thing was that their ability to deal with in excess of 1.2 billion euros of a budget that's been voted from here through your department onto the Higher Education Authority and down into colleges, it left me with a lot of unanswered questions as to whether I believe that the competencies and the skill set is there to actually properly manage that 1.2 billion. Because while the National College of Art and Design was the focus of our attention that day, I have no doubt in my mind, and I don't think anybody really did, to be honest about it, that there were serious deficiencies in relation to how the HEA and your own department liaised with constituent colleges that are in receipt of funding indirectly from the Department of Education. And I think there's a major issue there. And it's something I know that committee is going to revisit, because it left unanswered questions in all of our minds as to how many other colleges are out there with issues like this. Because, as I said to them on the day that they were there, if they were in the real world of trading as a business, their directors would have been struck off, they'd have been wound up, and they could very well be facing the wrath of the law in terms of their ability to actually carry out their functions. But there seems to be some sort of insulation wrapped around them when they derive their funding from the public purse. And people that are out there in small businesses and medium-sized businesses and in no business don't believe that that's acceptable. And that's something definitely I think that needs to be. And the Secretary General of your department certainly had a lot to say in it, and I hope that they follow through in it. Just in relation, Minister, with the indulgence of the Chair, and I know a couple of other people said it, and I want to follow on from the previous speaker, Deputy Conaghan. He made a very, very important point in relation to further education. And I know that it's a legacy that has been inherited by you, Minister, but you might be able to do something with it as the economy recovers. And that is the fact that there is no capital funding available for a lot of these technical schools, old schools, that became colleges of further education. You know ones like Abbeyfield and Shannagold, and not too very far away from yourself, that are doing excellent work, but they have access to no capital funding. And really, to be honest about it, it's with the kind of goodwill of the Education and Training Board that they make some sorts of minor works available. And I think, if we value them, as we do our primary schools and our second level schools, and we know that the HEA are well capable of looking after the university sector and all the rest of them. These are people that are falling between stools when it comes to the actual capital works and the physical infrastructure. And it's that physical infrastructure as well that brings me to another point. And it's this, that, whether you're in a university or whether you're in a primary school or in a preschool, the physical infrastructure that the student is in, whether they're 4 years of age or 40 years of age, the physical infrastructure is hugely important because it's part of the environment where the teaching and learning takes place. I was dumbfounded when I put down a parliamentary question recently in relation to whole school evaluations and how many schools had shown, inspectors had written reports where there was inadequacies, and there was only 3. I can think of 3 within a 5-mile radius of my own home at home. And I would like, Minister, if you could at some stage, really look at the WSEs as money comes on stream, that the physical environment where the teaching and learning is to take place is every bit as important, probably in some cases more important if you have a child with a learning difficulty or a young person with a learning difficulty, because the stimulus that they have, the colour of the paint on the wall, the physical space that they have, how close they are to the child beside them, all that matters. And if you have to move, as I did one day, 8 children to get one out to go to the toilet, it causes a huge amount of upheaval. And I think it's a bit disingenuous that WSEs are being carried out and the inspector is to walk in with a pair of blinkers on them. Just look at what the teacher is doing, just look at what the child is doing, and forget about the physical environment that they're working in, because I think that in itself doesn't really tell the whole story of what's going on in the school. And I know it's something that you've inherited. And in the days of full and plenty, when the party opposite were in government, none of this happened. So I'm not expecting it to happen overnight now. But I do think we should be putting a plan in place to address it. And I know the school building programme does capture part of it. But I think if the WSEs were properly structured, it would actually strengthen your hand with your colleague, the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform, in terms of leveraging more money out of that department for the work that's absolutely vital in that area. One final thing, and I'd say I've met recently with our own Education and Training Board in relation to Croom, and I know you have a particular interest in this. It is absolutely hugely important, following on from what Deputy Moynihan was saying about Kanturk. It's hugely important that that school goes ahead. The sooner the better. It's a school for over 1,000 pupils. It'll probably be one of the biggest in the Midwest, if not the biggest. And the conditions that they're in there at the moment are appalling. And I know that you've committed the funding to it, and I know the Department of Education are fully behind it, but the sooner really that we get the work actually started there and the planning finished, the better. But just in relation to the bill, Cahir, look, and I'll finish up, this is a good bill. It's something I think that should be, there's a potential maybe to broaden it into the second level students at some stage. And other than that, I wish the Minister well in her role.
Thanks, Deputy. And